was great.
You're keeping it.
Crazy setup. I feel like I'm getting locked in here.
I feel like I'm ready to play the guitar.
Hello, everybody. Happy Friday.
Is it Friday already, Jesse?
No, it's Thursday.
Okay, good.
But
Just
it's Friday
making sure.
energy. It's giving Friday energy for sure.
It's Friday in Denver, ladies and gents. All right, sweet. I think we've got a pretty good panel here. Obviously, I don't think either one of these builders need introductions, but we'll start with them anyways. I don't see why not. We got Jesse Pollak and, of course, Tess Rinearson here. Two of the biggest projects right now scaling on Ethereum. I don't need to tell you more. Jesse and Tess will. Jesse, let's talk first for people maybe who didn't hear about the Superchain, don't understand how important the Superchain is. Start with what it is for that maybe 5% of people who don't know all about it.
Awesome. Hey everyone, I'm Jesse. I created Base. Base is an Ethereum L2 incubated by Coinbase, and we are building as part of the Superchain. Superchain, you can kind of think about it like a big group of chains that have decided to come together and create something bigger than any one of them alone. And we're doing that by building on a shared technology stack that's open source and accessible to everyone. That's the OP stack. We're doing that by opting into shared security models with some things like the Security Council. And then we're doing that by actually creating technical interoperability between all of the chains so that they can actually more seamlessly transact. And then the last piece is we're building a bunch of governance and financial infrastructure that basically funds those chains and the developers that are building on those chains to make it so they can build more cool stuff on chain. So that's what Base is, and that's what the Superchain is.
That was pretty concise. That was very good. That's a good way to start, Jesse. Yeah. I like that off the bat. Tess, when we think about the title of this one, this is called The Optimistic Case for How the Superchain Scales Crypto. So there's a lot to unpack there, both optimism's role in that, I suppose, and also how we scale crypto. So why don't we just talk a little bit about your guys' strategy to do that by building on the OP stack?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, I'm Tess. I'm head of product at OP Labs. We work on the OP stack, we work on Optimism, we work on OP mainnet, we work on the software that powers the Superchain and the chains in it like Base. And we are trying to make crypto more accessible, cheaper, scalable, give people more use cases with it. And so the Superchain is obviously a really big part of that. One thing that's coming up that I'm sure lots of folks in the Ethereum space are talking about is Dencun and 4844, which is going to be huge. EIP 4844 is actually created in conjunction with the Base team, so that's one reason why we're really excited about it. But the other reason we're excited about it is that it is going to lower transaction fees on L2s really, really dramatically. And I think there's been a little bit of hesitation to give exact numbers on that, just because we don't really know what demand will look like. But if the traffic stays the same, from what we've seen historically or recently, we actually think transaction fees are going to go down 97, 98%. So yeah,
a lot.
Sub-cent.
Mathematically speaking, I believe that number is a lot.
Yeah.
That's the technical term. Exactly.
But I mean, all of that matters because we are seeing, I know, Jesse, your big thing is building on chain, right? Mm-hmm. And we are seeing a lot more of that now, and obviously the cost wouldn't necessarily matter if the use cases weren't there, but there are so many right now as part of the Superchain. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about, specifically Base, but also everything else within the Superchain ecosystem and what you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the last, Base has only been live for 6 months, which kind of blows my mind every day. We actually announced the testnet last year at ETHDenver. But in the last 6 months, I think on Base, but on the Superchain more broadly, we started to see the real rise of consumer apps. And these range from things like Farcaster, where people are doing on-chain social, and you actually have a real organic feed starting to develop with in-feed apps called Frames, many of which are built on Base right now. That's been really exciting. We've seen things like Blackbird, that's now in more than 100 restaurants around in New York, expanding to San Francisco and the Bay Area soon, targeting 2,000 restaurants by the end of the year, all built on chain. We're seeing collaborative art projects like Base Paint, where people all over the world are coming together to create art and then sell that art and earn money from doing it. And so I think just in the last really 6 months, what's happened is we finally have fees that are in a low enough place to enable this innovation. Then we have wallet experiences that are easy enough that people can actually use the apps that are being built. And then I think we're also finally starting to have a real sense of identity on chain and a social graph, which then connects those things together in a way that can let things go viral. And so we've been saying for a long time that those were the three missing pieces: lower fees, better wallets, and better identity. And now for the first time, they're actually all here. And I think what that's meaning is that we're going to see the next, or we are seeing the next wave of applications that are going to bring millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions of people on chain.
I was waiting for you to also maybe shill Coinage as another project that was built on Base as, a community-owned media outlet. But we are also on Base. And I answer,
Woo, Coinage.
Yeah, Coinage, baby. Colorado co-ops. I'll talk about that later. I don't need to show my stuff. But I am talking about it because it's part of the retroactive goods funding that is core, I think, to what you guys are doing at Superchain, which I think is really cool, just in terms of aligned incentives. So Tess, maybe talk a little bit more about kind of how you've been supporting creators building on the Superchain, what you've seen thus far, and then what's to come.
Yeah, absolutely. So a big part of the, is this in the right place? I can't tell. A big part of the Optimism vision is around public goods funding and really reinvesting in, not only the infrastructure that powers Optimism and powers the chains in the Superchain, but also just funding everyone who's contributing to the ecosystem, giving back. So a big piece of that is definitely creators. We have distributed, I think over hundreds of millions of OP tokens to creators across the Superchain. So it's not just on OP mainnet, it's also on Base, it's on Zora. We really want to give back to the people who are making the ecosystem so vibrant and so much fun.
And I think this is one of the really remarkable things about what Optimism's done. If you think about where Optimism was a year and a half ago, Optimism was an L2. We all thought, Optimism, it's that L2. They're going to try and compete with other L2s and win market share there. And then over the last year, Optimism has basically transformed. And now Optimism is much bigger than a single L2. There's that thing that used to be called Optimism, which is now called OP Mainnet, which is an L2. But Optimism has expanded its definition into the Superchain. And that includes Base, it includes Zora, it includes WorldCoin, it includes Farcaster, it includes all of these people who are building incredible applications, either on general purpose L2s or dedicated L2s that they're starting to spin up. And alongside making that shift for what Optimism is, they've also shifted what they're funding. And so whereas the first few rounds of retroactive public goods funding were focused specifically on OP mainnet, this most recent one was across all of the Superchain. And that means that in the last 6 months, in 6 months of people building on Base, Optimism has given 15 million OP tokens retroactively to Base builders. And today, that's about $45 million. And so sometimes people ask us,
I think that's big.
Go Optimism. Sometimes people ask us, how should we think about building on Base? Do you guys have grants? And yes, we have fast grants programs. You can get, fast grants if you ship impactful things on Base. But I think the ethos that we've really tried to instill with builders is if you build on Base, you will be rewarded. And the reason we have been able to instill that ethos is because Optimism is creating a funding model that works for Base, that works for Zora, that works for other chains, where when people make an impact on the ecosystem, they make an impact on Base, they make an impact on the Superchain, they get rewarded. And I think that feedback loop of do good things that make an impact and then get rewarded is the feedback loop that we need more of, because we need less of this feedback loop of get paid and then maybe don't contribute.
One question on that too, because I think around aligned incentives, the fact that you guys are bringing in builders who are all aligned, and again, the OP token is the token here. Base doesn't have a token.
Totally.
And it's been interesting to kind of watch that play out. I think, it's been, are they going to have a token? Can we rule out that Base will never have a token?
No change. There's no plans for a token on Base. And
you heard it there.
I think one of the things that's been really powerful about not having a token on Base is it's kind of forced us to do things the hard way.
Yeah.
Today actually Base crossed $1 billion of TVL. That's completely unincentivized, completely inorganic in 6 months. I don't think there are other examples of people doing that, and the reason why I think we've been able to accomplish that is because without the token kind of looming over us, we've had to say, okay, what can we do to support builders on our merits? How do we get them more distribution? How do we give them better tools? How do we get them in front of other builders so that they can actually collaborate and do more together than if they were alone? And I think that forcing function and that kind of rigor that it's driven with us has been hugely valuable. And then, of course, we've had optimism getting our back and saying, hey, we know Base doesn't have a token, but if you build on Base, you will be rewarded. And I think that combination of creating an environment where Base is earning builders on the merits, and then optimism is continually showing up to fund builders who contribute impact is basically unbeatable. And one of the things that gets me really excited about it is it's not like this is a one-off. Optimism has, like 800 million OP tokens that are already set aside to be allocated to builders through retroactive public goods funding. So if you build on Base, or you build on Zora, or you build on OP mainnet, 6 months from now, we will go through the same process that we just went through. And if you had an impact, you will get a large chunk of OP tokens, and you will be rewarded for building on Base.
I think you said rewarded like 27 different times there. So I think people know now. Now they know. And I will say, I learned it too. And Tess, you were talking about it. You mentioned the chains that you could be building on. It was even retroactive for people who built on ETH too. Yeah. It was. Totally. I mean, let's give that a shout out as well, because it wasn't even like you have to do this. It's just people who are building for the Ethereum ecosystem.
Yeah. And it's not. I mean, like, it's not just Base builders getting rewarded, right? It's across the Superchain. And it's not just Optimism funding this through RPGF or through airdrops. And by the way, Jesse mentioned, 800 million OP tokens for RPGF. It's also 800 million OP tokens for airdrops, right? And like the last airdrop we did was specifically for creators on Base and Zora, again, people who are really contributing to that ecosystem. But yeah, I mean, people who are contributing to chains beyond Base and OP mainnet, I think are also getting a lot of rewards that go beyond, RPGF. Zora just announced that they paid out $100 million to creators in like sequencer revenue, giving that back to the people who are creating their ecosystem. Yeah. And that was last month.
It's not sequencer revenue. It's protocol fees. It's from their protocol. But yes.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah.
Very excited about that.
Well, let's talk about, I guess, obviously there are a lot of options in scaling Ethereum, and as we said, there's more creators building on chain, which is great. But when it comes to, I guess, the amount of different options on the table, how do you guys look at that in, I guess, all the different, right now, ways to scale Ethereum? Is there ever going to be too many ways to scale Ethereum? Could it even be that there would be too many ways to scale Ethereum?
I think that what's happening right now is we're kind of seeing a Cambrian explosion of people trying a bunch of different technology paths, figuring out, okay, we have this incredible foundation. Now, how do we build the next layer on top of it that lets us bring that not just to millions of people, but billions of people? And whenever you have that sort of kind of Cambrian explosion of innovation, you have massive expansion. And I think that's kind of where we've been for the last few years. My sense is that what we're going to see over the next few years is we're going to see some natural consolidation. And I think this is candidly what's happening with the OP stack and Optimism and Base. Like, Base didn't say, hey, we're going to go and try and build a bunch of new technology. That's going to be proprietary, and that's going to be the solution. Instead, what we said is, we're going to build on open source technology, become the second core developer, and make it so whatever we build, everyone else can benefit from. Yep. And then where we're going to focus our energies is running a go-to-market and supporting builders and building a culture. And I think that that's been hugely successful. And if you kind of think about what's happening in the ecosystem right now, I think Base has kind of established itself as the market leader where people are building new consumer products. And I think what we will likely see in the next few years is that more people take that strategy, where they take the technology stack like the OP stack, and they say, hey, let's contribute to this thing. Let's bring our unique value. Maybe that's distribution, maybe that's culture, and let's build something that's bigger than just technology, but it actually looks a lot more like a society and when we bring it all together.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, there is some amount of consolidation, but it's consolidation that leads back into diversification, but like more aligned diversification, right? Totally. So one thing that's really important to Optimism and the way that we're working to scale is our multi-proof roadmap. So this idea that, we don't want to just have one single proof securing everything. We want to actually have a range of different implementations, both of the optimistic proof, but then also, or the the fault proof, but then also having ZK validity proofs and things like that. And so we're working with teams across the Optimism ecosystem to build all of these different implementations of the proof system. So again, there is kind of a realignment and a consolidation around some of these approaches, but at the same time, it's also about exploring some of these different approaches and directions, but in a way that comes together and drives us towards something together.
Yeah, it's been so cool. I mean, people oftentimes are like, so is Base going to be forever an optimistic roll-up? And I'm like, that's where we're starting, but if you look at what's happening on Optimism right now, we have probably the 3 best ZK teams who are building general purpose ZK VMs, not ZK EVMs, but Risk Zero, Succinct, and O1 Labs, all working on building OP stack proofs. And so what that means is it means that sometime in the next year or so, we're going to be able to take these market-leading teams and the technology they've built, and we're going to be able to roll out proofs that are validity proofs for OP mainnet and Base and the entire Superchain, and we're going to have the best of all these worlds. And I think that is really only possible because of the culture and approach that Optimism has taken around saying, hey, we're not going to try and do this all ourselves. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to build governance infrastructure and we're going to build funding infrastructure that brings in the best talent to contribute to one shared open source framework that everyone can use.
No, I think again, it's really cool, and as creators have looked at this, at Coinage, we kind of the first to put NFTs, token gated content on chain, and there were some people, even though it was free, there were some people who was like, I don't know about gas. And now as we're talking about scaling Ethereum, there are so many different possibilities that become real and legit almost overnight. You're talking about frames on Farcaster.
Totally.
We got maybe 4 minutes left, but I don't know if there's another thing, Tess, that you would want to shout out as kind of we've arrived in the way that this is possible now.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I feel like, so I've been working in crypto for 9 years, which is kind of unbelievable when I say that aloud. And actually, this is going to be a tangent, an anecdote, but Jesse was a big factor in me getting into crypto. I was sort of thinking about going to work for this, it was a Bitcoin API company at the time, but I wasn't really sure about this whole crypto thing. I wasn't really sure about this Bitcoin thing. And then Jesse and I happened to sit next to each other on a
bus.
On a 4-hour bus ride, and he talked about Bitcoin the whole time. And by the time I got off that bus, I was in. I was ready to go. And obviously, a lot has happened and changed in that time. I mean, even at that time, Ethereum hadn't launched. That's sort of the era that we were in. And for a long time, every year or two, I'd be like, maybe someone will actually build something with this stuff at some point. And for a long time, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to give it 1 more year, and I'm going to see what happens. And this has really been the year for the first time where I'm not saying it's 1 more year.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is the year. It's happening.
That's bullish, everyone. If Tess is saying that,
I know.
I've been
You
saying,
were the one who had to. Yeah.
I've been saying this is the year for 4 years. So at this point, you got to discount me. But I honestly do think that this is the year. Last year, we tried to do, we did On-Chain Summer. I hope some of you participated in that. The whole idea was let's figure out how to get people from never having done anything on crypto to doing something on-chain in less than 60 seconds. We gave it our best shot. It was awesome. I think all the crypto people loved it.
Yeah.
But the reality is that where we were from a usability perspective was it wasn't good enough. And we had billboards up and wheat paste, and people would try and do it, and it would take them 10 minutes, and they would just churn. This summer, and we're running On-Chain Summer again, so if you are a builder, let's go.
Back.
If you're a builder and you have cool stuff that you are building on-chain, get it ready for this summer because we're going to be getting it in front of literally tens or hundreds of millions of people. And the difference this time is that the technology has matured. We're going to have 10 to 100 times cheaper fees.
Yep.
We're going to have much better wallets. For instance, Coinbase today launched a wallet where you can go from never having a crypto wallet to having a fully powered smart wallet controlled by a passkey in less than 10 seconds with no app and no extension that any developer automatically gets out of the box if they've integrated Rainbow Kit.
Yeah.
That launched today. And what that means is it means that this summer, when we have more media on-chain, when we have more food on-chain, when we have concerts on-chain, when we have games on-chain, when we have our savings on-chain, when we have literally everything on-chain, it's going to reach hundreds of millions of people. And so this is the year.
This is the year. It's always the year. But no, this is actually the year. And Tess, you can take us home. Jesse got you to get into crypto when you were on the bus for 4 hours. You got 45 seconds-ish to get everybody who's not. You're at ETHDenver, so you're probably already on the bus.
You guys are on the bus.
But what do you have to look forward to? Tell us again on where we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the year. We're seeing real use cases. We're seeing people who, you know, are in it for the new and novel things you can do. You know, we talk now about having fun on chain, right? 2 years ago, we were not having fun on chain.
No fun.
I mean, people were doing things on chain, but it wasn't that much fun. So.
Well, I'm super stoked to see what's possible now. Shout out to you guys. Shout out to the Superchain. Shout out to you, Jesse and Tess. Thank you again, everybody. Jesse Pollak from Coinbase, from Base, call it Base. Tess Rinearson, OP Labs. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.